Welcome to my 2021 Game of the Year video. Or at least, that's what I'd love to say. But someone decided we should have a dishonorable mention, so let's get all that negative energy out of the way with my most disappointing game, Back 4 Blood. Back in August, there was an open beta, and simply put, my friends and I loved it, and we're really excited for the full release. It really was just modern Left 4 Dead, and you know what? It's not a bad thing. However, the main difference was this idea of corruption cards, which were essentially modifiers that changed the experience for players in subsequent runs, and on the player side, you had cards that would grant benefits to your character. As the resident roguelike aficionado, I thought this sounded perfect. I'd have all these builds to try, and would be able to replay levels without the chance of boredom because it would be so different. Unfortunately, it didn't quite turn out like that. In the beta, the game was balanced around a limited card pool for both the ridden and the player, so you didn't really get a sense of what the system would become. The issue with the card system, in my mind, is that, from a base level, they're just not that interesting. On the player side, telling me I have 10% reload speed or accuracy just doesn't sound exciting. Later on the line, you do get cards with bigger effects with drawbacks, like swapping your weapon reloads it, but you have 20% reduced ammo. But even then, my friends and I aren't playing the game any differently. And then we have the corruption cards. The majority of the enemy-based cards are simply a glorified health or damage buff, which, again, isn't very interesting. The only two cards off the top of my head that I thought were cool was the one that spawned extra birds, and the mist effect that lowered division. At least at the start. Reason being is that we were of course more cautious moving around the map with more birds, and then combat was made more interesting with this kind of trap element. The mist I originally thought was interesting, because you usually stand apart from your teammates to avoid friendly fire, but now you can't see your teammates unless in close proximity. However, this card was partially the reason why we stopped playing. We were in a forest level, with the mist and enemy wretches, which, if you've played Left 4 Dead, are essentially boomers, only imagine a boomer with the sniper scope. These guys would spawn anywhere around us, spew from fog of war with pinpoint accuracy, summoning a horde. And then the best part was that we had multiple wretches, not to mention other special infected running around, so we were eventually grinded down in what felt like an unwinnable situation. I think the special infected spawning may have been a bug, but even so, I just feel the card system is rather unbalanced and doesn't add to the game in a positive manner. Maybe it'll change when the game receives a few more patches, but right now, I will not be going back. 4 Blood. Starting this year's list, I have It Takes Two by Hazelight Studios. Just like how I had A Way Out in a previous game of the year, I feel like Hazelight did it again with It Takes Two. It's the classic story of a child believing they're the reason for their parents divorcing, with the parents eventually remembering the foundations of their relationship, leading to a hinted happy ending for the trio. A typical story, but Hazelight presents it in a wonderful manner, first starting with a Honey I Shrunk the Kids situation, but with the help of Dr. Hakim, turn it into a psychedelic rollercoaster ride with how they portray the different environments around the family home. 1 minute you're fighting the vacuum cleaner in the shed, and suddenly you're fending off wasps in the garden, culminating in a 2D fighter against a squirrel on a plane as you make your escape. To say the game goes places would be an understatement. And I need to give credit to the writing and the voice work. May and Cody act perfectly in this world, and some of the writing really made me laugh out loud. As terrible as it is to say, I think the merciless killing of Cutie the Elephant was the best video game moment of 2021 for me.
I don't want to die.
How did we get in this situation? Well, we got here because of our daughter's tears, so let's go make her cry by mutilating her plushie. That'll fix everything. I know I sound like a psychopath, but you need to play this game to experience that moment. The bottom line is that multiplayer can be an afterthought in many games, but when its whole narrative and the gameplay is considered from the very beginning, you get something very special. And so if you do have someone to play It Takes Two, then do yourself a favor and give this game a shot. It's a wholesome slice of life adventure with some of this year's greatest moments that you don't want to miss. Next up, we have Inscription by Daniel Mullen. A late entry, but a damn good one. Originally, a game I had no interest in. Nick told me this would be up my alley, and as much as I hate to admit Nick is right about anything, he was right. This game is amazing. As I previously mentioned, I love my roguelikes, and this is the best roguelike this year. Similarly to Hades last year, the reason why this game holds itself above the rest is because there's this overarching story that takes place outside of the gameplay. It's revealed that you are in fact a YouTuber that found a copy of Inscription in the woods, and is slowly uncovering this government conspiracy. I don't want to spoil too much, but it's all genuinely intriguing, and you'd get even more out of it if you played Daniel's previous game, Hex. But even beyond the story, the game is a solid deck-building roguelike, and what I love the most is how the game evolves. In the first act, you're playing with all these beast cards and mechanics, and then in Act 2, 3 more deck archetypes are thrown into the mix, with the third act developing on these further. Although I've played plenty of these types of games in my time, I think this is a wonderful way to teach players while also keeping it close to the narrative, so it feels relevant. And that's the thing, it's this fourth wall breaking narrative that's the focus of the game. And so if you want to play something a little different and a bit out there, then look no further than Inscription. Shin Megami Tensei 5 is probably the poster boy of "this is my personal game of the year" list, and I'm sorry you can't appreciate it. SMT games are ruthless, and this is no exception. There's a reason why ever since I started playing SMT5, my YouTube is now recommending me multiple videos with titles such as SMT Bullshit or Just SMT Things. Assuming you're not overleveled, every encounter could be your last, with enemies potentially being able to two-shot your party. I was a psychopath talking about It Takes Two, but I'm going to sound like a masochist now, because I love the difficulty of this game. Bringing this game over to Nick's place, the other Bash Bros could see me getting beat over and over and over again by the same boss, and each defeat looked very convincing. But by using the knowledge from previous attempts, I could create a team that would exploit the boss's weaknesses, and the satisfaction of beating what was an immovable object by just taking the time to think gives me so much more satisfaction than grinding for some stat thresholds in other JRPGs. Unlike other monster collecting games where you could literally take your first team to the end, SMT demons do not level up at the same rate as the protagonist, so in time they will fall off. Which is great, because one of the most defining features of SMT is the demon designs and their interpretation of our mythical characters. And sticking with the presentation, it makes a whole world of difference, adding the exploration part of the game, where you're running around to destroy Tokyo. The scale and verticality that's added made me really appreciate this part of the game, in the same way Persona 5 had interesting dungeon designs instead of the copy and pasted rooms of Persona 4. Atlus has come a really long way in this regard, and I'm excited to see what their future games hold. But one aspect which I can trust the entire franchise to have is a banging soundtrack. It was almost nostalgic for me, because I think a lot of the music reminds me of a previous game, Digital Devil Saga, which was actually my first introduction to this franchise. My friends were not interested in watching me get beat over for the upteenth time, but in every attempt I could see them bobbing their heads to the music, and I think that means the soundtrack is a success. I know it's not for everyone, but if you think you can dance with the demons, don't hesitate to pick up the best JRPG of 2021. Maybe a strange pick for some, but my penultimate pick of the game of the year is a little game called Mini Motorways by Dinosaur Polo Club. Sometimes you don't want a big story-focused game, like the start of my list, or be stressed out in every encounter like SMT5. Sometimes you just want to relax and watch a city getting on with its day. Mini Motorways is a puzzle game about drawing roads to build a city. Houses and destinations will spawn, and it's your job to draw a line of roads so that everyone is happy. Red houses want to go to red destinations, blue houses want to go to blue ones, and so on and so forth. It's such a simple concept to pick up, but for anyone who's ever lived in a city, you'll know that traffic is a complex system to get your head around, and the game does a brilliant job of making a game out of it. Even the art style has this elegant simplicity to it that hides the mayhem of the streets. As someone who loves city builder games like City Skylines, my satisfaction comes from seeing a built city run like a well-oiled machine, and Mini Motorways jumps straight into that, as you watch your little cars frantically driving to their destination as if their life depended on it. Which it kinda does, because that's the fail state. If people can't get to the destination in time, that's it. The city has to shut down and it's game over. And you will fail. But that's okay, because each run you learn a little bit more about how to make your city more efficient, and it's this endless cycle that makes the game absolutely addicting. You'd think I'd have more to say about my penultimate game of the year, but this is definitely a case where less is more. And here we are, at my game of the year, Guilty Gear Strive. Let's just address the elephant in the room. This game looks gorgeous. From Dragon Ball FighterZ to Granblue and now Strive. I don't know how they do it, but Arc System Works gets better and better with their anime style every time. From the expressions of the characters, the hit stop when a move connects, each action you take feels weighty and satisfying. I've always been an admirer of fighting games, and played them rather casually, but Guilty Gear Strive simplified a lot of things and managed to get me into climbing the rank ladder, and I think this ranking system is one of the best I've seen. There's 10 floors, and while most games would set you off at the bottom, Strive puts all the players on the 6th floor, and from there, players are divided. What that meant was that the distribution of skill was far more accurate from the start of the game, and I very rarely felt I was in one-sided matches. And for me personally, as someone who takes long breaks from the game, jumping around between floors 7 to 9 feels great, because as soon as you stop thinking, this floor is telling me how good or bad I am, and more, this is the floor where I will enjoy the game the most, then suddenly you'll have a great time all around. Strive's success isn't from pure chance, but because they listen to their community, and I hope other developers follow this example. But you know what you should listen to? The Strive soundtrack. It is a meme when people say it's very generous that Daisuke gave us a full game with his newest soundtrack, because it's just that good, and the game is littered with references. The main protagonist, Soul Bad Guy's real name is Frederick, as in Freddie Mercury from Queen, who had the nickname Mr. Bad Guy. To say Daisuke wears his inspiration on his sleeves would be an understatement, but all of the songs get you into the mood to play the game. Whether I'm playing Kai, hearing his song Roar of the Spark, or getting dolphined to death by May with her song The Disaster of Passion, it all just works. From the first trailer we saw, the main song, Smell of the Game, was memed the hell out of, with all of us wondering how the game would smell in the end. Well, I can tell you now that Guilty Gear Strive is the best smelling game of 2021.